Alright, so last time I did my bushing, I was asked to share my ways. So there's several ways to change the bushing, which is the one that goes there on the Rossi Moster 185. The recommended method is to remove the bolts, remove the whole exhaust assembly, and replace the bushing with the exhaust off the engine, which is great, except a couple of these nuts are a big pain in the ass to get to. And when you loosen the nut, the rubber spacers, if the nut on the backside gets loose, then it makes it really difficult to untwist it, and it just puts a lot of strain on those. I don't like doing it that way. Another thing is, without doing that, you don't really need too many special tools to do it in the field. So I'm going to show you how I do it. It's not the right way, it's not the best way, but it works fairly well. You're going to need something to cut these wires, or the safety wire. Some sort of pliers to crimp the new wire in place. Spring pulling tool, which I actually never got, and I use a old brake, or it's a brake cable, but it's the same thing as a throttle cable, to pull the springs. It's not a good way to do it. I should just have a tool, but this makes it more interesting to do in the field. So let's just get these cut and remove the old springs first and go from there. Alright, that's good enough. So here's how I use the brake cable. So the springs have little hooks, so I just run the brake cable in the air. I've kind of established this nice notch, and you can use pretty much anything. Like I'll use these pliers to wrap around the brake cable so you can't slide. Something like that. And you can just pull them off. It's much harder to put them back on, and so like I said, I recommend using an actual spring puller for this. But in a pinch, if you don't got one, or if you're at a friend's house, or if you're in the field, you could do this with other things like some sort of a steel wire rather than an actual cable. Same thing, wrap it around. And my engine's been making noises, it's been kind of rattly. And I looked over at the bushing, and there appears to be no more bushing. I fly a lot of hours, and so I replace these bushings multiple times per year, unfortunately, which gets old. I wish my engine didn't have a bushing system, which is sort of nice that my new engine that's coming in the mail has been lost, does not use that. The ones on the back are a little bit trickier and a little less convenient. Still pretty simple to do. The only annoying and kind of janky part about this is putting the bushing back on during reassembly. So sometimes I gotta bang on the pipe a little bit, which is not really a good practice. But it has not failed me yet. I have not had an exhaust fail on me yet, so yeah. Okay. Yep, there's no bushing, which explains my problem. There's no bushing to be removed. That's actually very unfortunate. That's not good for any of the parts. Good news is I don't see any damage to the pipe. Yeah, that's fine. Alright, so let's get the new kit out. So at this point I would have used some sort of a pry tool. I have an actual gasket scraper which I use for things like that. Here, let me show you. The bushing would sit right there, And so I would use some sort of a pry tool to get that off, or a flathead screwdriver very carefully without damaging the metal. And at this point you can slide the new bushing on. So one other thing that could be done is somebody recommended using anti-seize on there. I don't think this bushing could seize to the muff or to the exhaust. On the flip side, anti-seize is kind of slippery too, and so I can see how it would allow the whole assembly to move more freely. So it's not to say that I'm a wholehearted believer that this does anything at all, but there's no reason not to do it, and I keep anti-seize in my toolbox. So I'm just gonna put a little bit on there like I've been doing for the past while. Like I said, I don't believe this would prevent things like exhausts cracking. That's a little outrageous for me. I don't even know if I would go as far as recommending this as a thing to even do, but here I am doing it. Call that good. And so without removing the pipe, if you're careful, there's enough play in all of this to be able to slide the bushing in by pulling back on the exhaust. And like I said, the only janky part is getting that bushing back on. Some of them slide right on, like this one actually is. Yeah, that's it. Look at that. Perfect. Sometimes it doesn't go on as easily. It takes a little bit more effort. And you know, I've had to bang it with a mallet to get it back on. And this was not the case. This is probably my fastest bushing change. So when you order the kit, make sure to get one that has 4 springs, not 3. And what's weird is this is a Moster 185 Plus. They don't show it as a 4-spring kit on glider sports, and I had to find one that's for the dual start, which has 4 springs, but this is not a dual start engine. This is a single full start engine. And somebody's mowing the lawn. That's awesome. I hope you can still hear me. Alright, so here's how this part goes. You slide the heat shrink on. Now I like to run the safety wire through just so it's in place, so I don't have to try to snake it through there later. And this goes through the center of the spring. Oh, it slid out. There's 2 ways to safety wire this. Well, there's probably multiple ways to safety wire this. You can run through 2 springs connected on the underside, or you could run it across all 4 and have 1 piece of safety wire. I don't know if it matters which way you do it. I just do one on each side because it's easier to do it in steps that way. Just easier for me. It's not, there's no, I don't think this is very precise mechanics. Alright, my beautiful brake cable trick. Slide that on the hook. Okay. I'm going to wrap this a little bit more. It takes a little bit more effort to get it back on than it did to take it off. Oh, and it's rotated. Alright, that one's on. So it's off to the side, so I'll just correct that. Alright. Also, it probably makes sense to do one on the other side right now to make my job easier, but I've done this enough times where I can... So what I'm saying is if you pull one on this side, then it will keep the pipe straight, whereas if I do this one now, it will tend to pull the pipe towards me, and so the backside is going to be a little bit harder to get on. But it doesn't really matter. It's not like it prevents you from putting it on. Guys, get the tool. I don't know. Oh, it fell off. I don't know why I put myself through the misery of using this brake cable. The thing about it is, like, I always forget to order it, and then I'm finding myself wanting to install this. Alright, that's on. Alright, last thing, grab a crimp. Actually, I'm gonna probably shrink wrap. Well, it doesn't matter. I'll put the crimp on now. I forgot to mention one other tool you need is a lighter, or better yet, a heat gun is the right way to install heat shrink. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a blowtorch, which makes it a little bit faster. Okay, I'm just crimping that on with pliers. It's kind of moving. Let me do a better job here. Obviously, an appropriate crimping tool would work better. Alright, that's on. Cut that. Let me grab my blowtorch. Alright, so I got my blowtorch. And I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you're using fire to shrink tube, you don't need to cook these. It shrinks with little heat, so I'm keeping my distance and moving it a lot and fast. That's it. That ain't going nowhere. Alright. So I'm going to do the other side, come back, and we're done. That is an alternative method to doing exhaust springs. I mean, exhaust bushing and thus exhaust springs. And so that's what it looks like in the end. And you don't have to remove the stupid pipe to do it this way. Even though doing the actual job makes it easier if you remove the pipe, but removing the pipe is a big pain in the butt, and putting it back on and requires more tools than this. So you could do this in the field if you have, you know, some of the tools. Alright, thanks for watching. Good luck. And that fixed my rattle. Good stuff.